All right, welcome to the Municipal EMC and EMA Stakeholder and Partner Training for June 8th, 2021. First, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Matt Brown for his report. Chief, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for getting everything set up and reminding us of all the basics of teams. Very important as we've driven through a greater element of COVID-19, really almost all of it in this virtual capacity, using teams very successfully, as well as many other efforts. Very beneficial that we continue to remind everybody of the usefulness of this virtual platform that we've grown into. So I'm going to keep it pretty brief. I think I've covered, for the most part, what we were doing as ACEs, and certainly reflective as each of you as EMCs related to COVID-19. Myself, Bob, Steve, others in EMA, we've been working to put together sort of a timeline. Bob's organized that we can share here, and it will, I think, play really beneficial to us when we go and do our after action of the COVID-19 response. Officially speaking, we ended the virtual EOC for COVID-19 response last week, as well as the final sit rep for COVID-19. Again, ACE's response doesn't mean the health department's out of it, but we did not see the need for EOC activation any further, and really no emergency operations as it related to COVID-19. And again, I think this virtual platform is going to grow and stay with us for many, many elements of what we do in our daily business moving forward. At a minimum, I think our EOC operations are almost always going to be a hybrid version in many cases, where we could physically be in the EOC, but then also have others attached virtually through Teams. We've just found that beneficial. So again, very briefly, some of our biggest highlights of ACE's efforts. Again, education related to COVID-19, specific to first responders, as well as PPE collection, warehousing, and distribution, standing up of our 911 operations, fire marshal's office, fire training academy, really converting over to Help EMA. These were the early days of COVID-19. Again, just educating ourselves, preparing, and making sure that we were managing all the PPE as best as possible. The alternate care site work, planning, preparation, and exercises that went into that, all documented and stored. The CBTS, community-based test site in McKeesport, which is still functionally operating today, planned it, built it, operated it for a couple months, and then handed it over to the health department contractor. Many other things in the middle of that, but last but not least, the vaccination assist, where we stood up the Castle Shannon site on behalf of the county health department, as well as we did a little bit of high-rise help, and then helping to organize with local EMS as that continued to evolve in supporting the health department. So there was a lot there. Again, I'm summarizing greatly. I do foresee us wanting to do an after action at some point. We're not quite there yet. We are starting to relax somewhat as it relates as a department. Our physical locations, we've now got posted using the CDC signage. You know, if you are vaccinated, don't need to have a mask. If you're not vaccinated, please wear a mask. But we are returning to some meetings in the building slowly to make sure that we're properly adjusting to things, as well as some trainings in the building too. Same things occurring at the fire academy. We've backed off of some of the 911 directives that have existed for well over 14 months now. We're no longer screening specifically for COVID. Again, if using our EMD, the call taker senses any of the signs and symptoms that are COVID, they can call it out, but they're no longer going to screen specifically for COVID-19. Same thing with the case share that the health department, again, I reiterate to everybody, we were the first in the Commonwealth to do that. We're thankful to the health department, Dr. Bogan and Tom, for assisting us to accomplish that. And we did that positive case share as a premise hazard in the CAD for 14 months. Incredible volumes of work, very beneficial to the responders to forewarn them of potential positive cases at certain addresses. those were all ended as well. So again, back to normalcy, lots of traffic, which adds to lots of traffic accidents. Mother Nature throwing us all the challenges here, spring and summer. Thought for sure we'd have some flash flooding events there yesterday. Certainly going to be potential for some of the days this week as we continue through some unsettled weather. You know, I'm just reminded of the fact that we did have a tornado during the pandemic that we responded to. In fact, Stephen Berlina actually went out on behalf of the National Weather Service just to confirm location and condition. We had many other, you know, protests, civil unrest, presidential visits, candidate visits. There was a boatload on top of COVID-19, and everybody, and I do mean the entire EMC as well, worked fantastic with us. The key was just good communication, and I know we probably dropped the ball in a few places, but we were really struggling hard to make sure that at the very minimum we were communicating well through our sit reps, through our updates, and through our virtual EOC, so that we can hopefully keep everybody on the same page with the same focus and goals moving forward. So again, as we return to normal, all the normal challenges start to return, but they are continue to be the same emergency management challenges we were faced with pre-COVID. In fact, in some of them, they may be even a little bit more challenging. So I just stressed to everybody, if you've not gotten your vaccination yet, certainly encourage you to do that. I'm sure Tom will add to that as well. But then also just really paying attention as we adjust back into some of the normal life, and making sure that we're properly prepared for all that. So again, appreciate all the partnerships. We could not have done it without everybody's assistance. And I thought everybody did a fantastic job throughout. That's all I got, Bob, unless anybody has any questions.
I do not see any questions regarding your report in the chat. Just to go along, you mentioned the timeline that was attached to the end of the sit rep that went out yesterday or last week. So if anyone wanted to see the timeline that we had prepared as of now, it hasn't changed yet. That is on the sit rep that went out last Tuesday. Just moving along, I did place back in the chat the sign-in sheet link. Please, some people did sign in after did log in after I first posted that. So please click on that link so you get credit for attending. Right now, I only have 60 people that have filled it out. We have 80 people in attendance. Moving along with the meeting, moving to the county EMA report, and I will move on to Division Manager Steve Wilharm.
Thank you, Bob. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate your attendance. And do you remember 2019? Isn't that funny? I mean, we had one hell of a year here, but 2020 was crazy. But anyway, 2019, I started my talk about hazard mitigation plan. And at this point, I am happy to announce that out of 130 municipalities, 121 have adopted the Allegheny County plan. And let me tell you, it's probably the easiest thing that you've ever worked on. All you needed to do was participate in 2 meetings, number 1 being a kickoff meeting, and the second meeting was to pick 3 mitigation ideas that pertain to your town. The last thing that you needed to do was to have your local government adopt the plan by resolution. I told you had 3 choices. Choice number 1 was to adopt the Allegheny County plan. Choice number 2 was to write your own plan and have it approved by PEMA and FEMA. And choice number 3 was to do nothing. So Bob is posted. We are at 92%. My goal is 100%. And according to Chief Brown, anything less than 100% is unacceptable. So Bob could be on the chopping block. Obviously not me, Bob, I apologize. But so our goal, you see the names up here. We have to get 100%. This is an absolute no-brainer. So you have to get to your local government. You had to attend a meeting, pick 3 projects, and lastly, put them up for adoption. We are down to the last, it looks like 8 now, right? Yeah, last 8. So that's great. It's great. We're there. We're close. We just have to finish up here. So Let me just tell you what happens if these 8 decide not to. If there is a federally declared disaster, the very first thing that FEMA asks for is, do they have a current emergency operations plan, a current EOP? They have to have a current EOP. Has to be within 2-year currency. The second thing is, do they have a hazard mitigation plan adopted by their local government? If they answer no to either one of those questions, your money, and this is guaranteed, will be denied. So you, last 8, have to explain to your local government and your residents as to why you didn't follow through with this, because they used to say no dough for snow. Well, if any incident or disaster federally declared occurs in Pennsylvania and you're involved in it, you cannot get any funding. None. Zero. Also, without adopting that plan or writing your own that is approved by PEMA and FEMA, you cannot apply for any hazard mitigation grants. That includes the BRIC grant that's going on right now. And if you don't believe me, contact people like Elizabeth Burrow. They're going through this right now. And the first thing they were asked is, did they adopt a hazard mitigation plan? And yes, they did. So they can continue on with their grant, and they stand to get a couple of $1 million. So if you want to pass on this, it's totally up to you. I can't force you to do this, but let me tell you something, folks. This is an absolute no-brainer. Get this done. So we're going to hammer these last 8 on the list, and hopefully you'll comply and adopt this plan. Is there any questions for me? Or are there any questions for me? I see a hand raised, Bob. You want to read?
Unmute. Bruno, you're able to unmute.
Hey, Steve, can you hear me now?
I can. Go ahead, Bruno.
If they didn't participate from the very beginning, can they still get in on it?
It's very thin, but Madeline, they have up to 4 or 5 months. I can't remember that number to participate, but they have to watch 2 or 3 videos on it, and they have to pick their projects. You can't just go in and have your township or borough adopt without participation. So they will have the second chance to participate.
And we
So in
only
other words, they still have to go through the process, but they can't just adopt
That's
it
correct.
and be covered.
That's correct. It's not fair.
Right.
Yes.
That is correct. We only have 1 municipality out of 130 that fall in that, and we have been in contact with them, and they are working with a consultant to complete the participation process.
Bob, that completes my report. I don't see any other questions. I'm available the rest of the night. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat or ask Bob, and I'll be definitely here to answer them. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. And before I move along, first of all, Chief Emberlina, do you have anything that you want to bring up? I'll hear from him. Chief Tomer, do you have anything? That doesn't know then. All right, move along with some updates from EMA. As of June 1st, the EMA staff are full-time back in the office, resuming regular assignments. That's when we close the EOC and finish the sit reps. I have posted for the remainder of 2021 the training plan and schedule, and we will be starting in-person training in mid-July. For 2022, the EMA quarterly will resume the hybrid, where we'll have in-person and also streaming, and then doing the Moodle. And tentatively, we'll stick with the same schedule that we have now, which would be the second Tuesday to the third month of each quarter. We're going to go to just a 10 a.m. session at that time. But again, we are recording it and replace on Moodle, so those who are unable to attend at 10 a.m. Will be able to attend it at their own leisure for 30 days after it is posted. Some questions we have received was about ending the declaration of emergency and how to do it. And there's a few ways. Basically, there's no template It depends on what your municipality, how they've done it. If it's one of those, because they permitted municipalities to extend it indefinitely until the person who declared a disaster states it's over. So you just have to do that in writing. It really, I confirmed earlier today, it doesn't have to be in a meeting, because just like a disaster declaration doesn't have to be in a meeting. But whoever did the initial declaration has to do something, just declaring it's over by resolution or declaration. If you have one that's going like every 30 days, as some municipalities are doing, if you just don't ratify it after 30 days, it expires, it's automatically over. Any questions on the disaster declarations? Not seeing any. I'm going to move along. Fred, are you on? I see
Yeah,
you're
I'm
on.
here. I'm here, Bob. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm going to mute myself. You just let me know when to advance the slides for you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Again, thanks for having me talk here. Again, so for those who don't know me, I'm Fred McMullen from the National Weather Service in Pittsburgh, right down the road there in Moon Township. And so Bob asked me to talk about the kind of summer outlook, some new climate stuff, and some notification changes that'll be happening that'll affect everybody here. So we'll go to the next slide. So again, some of the big notification changes take place in the middle of next month when a software upgrade it takes place with the cell carriers. So in the past, we've alerted people's phones through wireless emergency alerts for tornado warnings and then flash flood warnings. Now we're able to do it for 80-mile-per-hour winds and baseball-sized hail. So 80-mile-per-hour winds cause, if you think of a derecho, which is a fast-moving line of storms, it causes usually widespread down trees and power issues. And these result in, fatalities, trees falling on cars with people in them. And so we're going to be able to alert people's phones for that. And then baseball-sized hail, again, it hasn't been seen too often in Allegheny County, although in each of the last 3 years, we've had baseball-sized hail reported in Beaver County and Columbiana and Hancock County in West Virginia. So baseball-sized hail does happen annually, but nothing in Allegheny County over the last 20 years. So look for that probably sometime in mid-July, and we'll send information out when it becomes active. We'll go to the next slide. And then again, some of the changes that happened last fall. So again, we really haven't had a lot of flash flooding, which is good. But again, so now when we issue a flash flood warning, we have a tiered system. So a basic flash flood warning will not alert your phones. If we can call it a considerable flash flood, which is like a tag that we use at the bottom of our warning, that will alert your phones, and then the catastrophic will alert your phone. So a considerable and catastrophic examples are what happened in the South Hills back in June of 18. That's a good one. Ivan is a good one. So again, these high in Washington Boulevard, those are the events that we're going to trigger people's phones for flash flood warnings because of studies done. They thought we were alerting phones too much. So we're kind of going to scale that down. And then again, it's based on the polygon, the threat area that we draw. And for the most part, the way the carriers work, it's every phone that's in that box. So we'll go to the next slide. So just something to keep in mind is, as Pennsylvania opens back up, and we work with the Fusion Center, and if you have outdoor events, so this is something that we can provide the Fusion Center, and also any municipality, the county EMA. It gives you kind of a lightning frequency. So say, for example, your township has a community days the first week of August. Okay, well, what's the periodicity of seeing lightning strikes during that period? Is maybe as a threat assessment into the event. And then also, again, you can reach out to the National Weather Service, to provide, weather heads up to these events. And that's something, again, please, work through the ACES. My contact information will be on the last slide. Reach out to me, and we'll try to give you information, a heads up ahead of these big events. And it's good to see these outdoor events going on because as we return to a normal pre-COVID posture. So then the next slide. So again, the other big thing is that in May, we released a new climate normal. So every 10 years, we update our climate normals. So now our climate normals run from 1991 to 2020. So it's a moving 30-year window, updated every 10 years. And so some of the big changes that you see on the left is the annual precipitation change. Again, you can see much of the eastern United States and the northern plains, the precipitation change went up as we moved from 1981 to 2010 to include 1991 to 2020. And then also on the right is the temperatures, and temperatures went up as well across much of the country by about 0.5 degree for the most part, is our temperature change across the United States. We'll go to the next slide. So drilling down more towards Pittsburgh. So this is how Pittsburgh fares. So we saw increases across the board in precipitation by season, average temperature, and then snowfall outside the spring season. Interesting to know that our precipitation went up about 1.5 inches annually with these new normals. Our snowfall went up about 3 inches. So you get to remember, we take in some bigger snow events. The 2010 Snowmageddon. We lose some of the 1980 snow events that were really big. And we have 93, 94 still in there, which are really weighted heavily. And so again, so it's a 30-year sample of winters. And then the average temperature, of course, went up in every season as well. So to kind of give you an idea, comparing 90-degree days were warmer than lows 70 or above. Again, it really not much change in the number of 90-degree days. About 10 days is what we average now with the new normals, and lows 70 or above. This is where we saw the biggest change. So when people talk about climate change and increasing temperatures, most of it is from the overnight lows being warmer, and we see that here as our number of days that we have 70 degrees or above actually rose by 2, which is almost 25-30%. So again, overnight lows are warmer. That's a common trend across a good chunk of the country right now with the new normals. We'll go to the next slide. Again, so it's been a slow start for the weather folks here in Moon. We have had our lowest number of severe thunderstorm warnings since the late 80s issued so far this calendar year. Again, we've only issued 8 severe thunderstorm warnings, and we've issued 3 tornado warnings. And we've already had 1 confirmed tornado in Lawrence County, and that was a weak EF0 tornado. Flash flooding, very similar. Again, a low start in terms of we haven't issued any flash flood warnings the entire year. And you really have to go back to 1987 to get numbers that low to start out the season. So again, very, very slow start. It's kind of concerning because Mother Nature always finds a way to balance everything out. So hopefully we don't see an uptick in July and August. But right now, most of our severe weather events are May through June. And it looks like with a trend over the next couple of weeks, we're going to escape June without having a major event, looks like right now. So go to the next slide. So here's just kind of an idea of climatology. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. As you can see, Allegheny County averages, somewhere around 20 severe thunderstorm warnings per year, which is, some of the highest in the state. The image on the right shows you the number of tornado warnings. Again, right around just under 1 average per year from 1986 through 2020. Again, which is usually on the lower end for the state. We go to the next slide. Flash flooding, this is kind of where we stand out the most. That's our biggest impact. Again, we average, in Allegheny County, almost 8 flash flood warnings a year, which is the highest in the state. And then as we go into the right image, which is the average number of flash flood watches per year, we're kind of on the high end as well, with almost 4 flash flood watches issued for Allegheny County on an annual basis. So again, that's kind of where, people always we have meteorologists that love severe weather and tornadoes, but like we always tell them when you come to Pittsburgh, it's always for flash flooding. We'll go to the next slide. So look ahead. So, hey, what's the summer look like, right? So vacation plans are coming. People are going out traveling. Outdoor venues are spinning back up. And so you can see the left is the temperature outlook. Again, warmer than average temperatures across much of the eastern United States. And then for most of the country, for that matter. And then the right image shows you the precipitation outlook. This is for June, July, and August. And temperatures are expected to be above average, and the precipitation is supposed to trend above average. Now, coincide this with an above average Atlantic hurricane season that's forecast this year. So we're going to have to kind of watch that, because when you see the East Coast painted with that green, that could show you potential tropical systems that come in. So that's something we're going to watch out for. Historically, most of the extratropical hurricane remnants that come to Western Pennsylvania happen in August and September. And so we're going to hopefully, we'll get a break this fall again this year, but that's what we'll be watching out for over the coming months. And I think that's it, Bob. So just a kind of a summary. For Allegheny County, the lightning frequency peak is the last week of June between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. That's historically when we see the greatest cloud to ground lightning strikes in Allegheny County. Again, my contact information is below. Again, community days, anything, like thyra assessments or any questions you have about weather, again, feel free to reach out to me. That office phone number goes to my cell phone too. So even though I'm not in the office most days, we're still kind of in a really required mandatory telework. But again, that'll reach me. And then again, the slow start for severe weather season, and hopefully Mother Nature doesn't try to balance things out here later this summer. And that's about all I have. I'll take any questions, Bob.
All right, thank you, Fred. If anyone has any questions, either raise your hand or go ahead and type in the chat, and I'll give a few seconds to see if there's any questions before we move along.
I have a question, Fred.
Yes, sir, Steve.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Good, thanks. Hey, are you going to be conducting any Skywarn classes anytime soon?
Well, we can do them online, and I tell you, and I would say that if you want to do an in-person class, we'll probably move to more in-person training that probably by later this summer.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Glenn Kopek, you had your hand up. Do you have a question?
No, Bob, accidental.
Okay, no problem. All right, not seeing any other questions. Thank you, Fred, very much.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, everybody, for having me. Stay safe.
All right, we're going to move on to Tom Mangan from the County Health Department to do a COVID update. Let me stop presenting. He has some slides to present. All right, Tom, you should be able to have control now.
All right. Let's see. So these slides come courtesy of Luann Brink. She was unable to join this evening. She has some other activities related to the end of her kids' school year. So I'll just step through it. It's similar to what was presented at the LEPC meeting for those of you who attended. So what we're looking at here is the whole trend from the beginning, 15 months ago to where we are actually the end of last month, early this month. If you look at the dark line that starts with a peak in before May 2020, then July and November, really peaks out in January and then tries to peak again in April. The little red arrow shows us where we are today with regard to new cases on a 7-day moving average within the United States. So this is very promising. It's in a good spot. If these increases were to keep escalating and escalating, that would indicate that something is very much out of control. However, the fact that the peaks started to go down after we got the vaccine made available in December and early January, I think is having an impact. So this is information from the county health department's data dashboard, indicating that to date we've have over 101,000 cases, with over 7,000 hospitalizations, and nearly 2,000 people have died from this. But the 7-day moving average is really what you need to look at. The number of cases on a 7-day moving average is relatively low. We're not talking hundreds or close to 1,000. We're talking 72. Positivity rates for the PCR tests is 2.8%. There's a factor involved that there's a lot less testing right now. And part of the reason for a lot less testing is a lot of people aren't sick anymore, and there isn't the same amount of screening that is taking place that may have previously compelled people to get tested. But in any event, if you look at the trend charts on the bottom, you see everything sort of peaking out. This is within the last 3 months. We caught that last peak, and now it's coming down for a landing on the right on each and every one of these, whether it's cases, number of people tested, or hospitalizations, or deaths. So this is all consistent. This is just a little review of where we've been and where we expect to be by the end of June with regard to all of the activities that took place to try to get this public health emergency under control, including the original shutdown 15 months ago, mask orders, restrictions on eating and drinking establishments, restrictions on gathering, easing into the school year where fall sports were able to take place with some restrictions, also and moving into a little peak again in November, where there was a second stay-at-home advisory issued, and some additional restrictions were put into place. As soon as the vaccine became available, everybody, as Chief Brown indicated, hit the ground running to get vaccine clinics up and running. And now we find ourselves where the mask mandate may very well be lifted by the end of June. So we're in a good spot right now. So with regard to who has to wear a mask, it comes down to vaccination at the moment. The governor has a target of 70% vaccinated in order to remove the mask mandate, or the end of the month, whichever comes sooner, I suppose, or hopefully they synchronize. So if you're fully vaccinated, you really should still be cautious. You know, we're not back to normal yet. You have to be cognizant of where you are, whether or not there's an increasing trend in new cases. If you want to travel internationally, be very aware of what's going on in that country. Not all countries are having the same success as we are at this stage of the game. So, however, there are some changes that if you have been vaccinated and you've been around somebody with COVID-19, you're not required to quarantine or test unless you are symptomatic. And there are different requirements for congregate care living facilities, sort of correctional facilities, homeless shelters, and other congregate living facilities. If you're around somebody, you should still get tested if they were sick, even if you're asymptomatic. Pennsylvania Department of Health has a dashboard indicating the rates at which people are vaccinated for COVID, indicating those with at least one vaccine. It shows 76%. It says over 100% of those 65 plus have received vaccinations. And, you know, successive percentages there. I just want to let you know, in case something changes on this dashboard, that we identified a discrepancy on the data with Allegheny County, in that it is because of the type of software that we used. So we started using PrepMod. With PrepMod, if you got a vaccination at one of our clinics, each vaccination occurrence created a new record. Those new records, so if you got two vaccines, you got two records. Those two records were supposed to have been duplicated and combined within the PA immunization registry, but that doesn't seem to be very successful. So it's actually overcounting the number of first doses and undercounting the number of second doses. So we're working to get that rectified so that the information on this dashboard is accurate. So just to give a recap also about the vaccine efforts that Chief mentioned, you know, as of last week, we had Allegheny County Health Department and our partners had given over 130,000 shots in the arms. So that's a combination of first and second doses, and also includes the single dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So we demobilized all our large sites. Among those, we did over 96,000 vaccination shots. Those were mostly 2-dose regimens. We have a number of other points of dispensing that came and went through the course of this, including an initial one at the Shop and Save in the Hill District, Peterson Event Centers. We had a lot of senior high rises where we were able to get a lot of vulnerable folks vaccinated without having them leave their homes. Central Baptist Church in the Hill District is still running on a daily basis. Bethlehem Baptist Church in McKeesport is winding down. And Robert Morris University in Moon Township, we have a plan to wind that down as well. We couldn't have done it without volunteer staffing, supplementing county staff, health department, other departments, emergency services, especially called out, emergency medical services, Medical Reserve Corps, Red Cross volunteers, and any number of nursing pharmacy students, and also volunteers from the host sites. So where we are is if you haven't gotten your vaccination, it's very available. You can get it at a lot of your drugstores through your health plans, at the remaining health department sites. There should be no reason not to get it unless you have a serious medical issue which prohibits you from getting it. But the sooner you get it, the better we'll be through with this. And one other thing, similar to the hazard mitigation planning, Allegheny County Health Department also does a community health assessment, which it helps us to identify what the greatest health concerns are among the populations. I would be remiss if I did not invite you to participate in this survey. There's a link in this box. I will put this information in the chat in case you want to follow it, share it among your coworkers and constituencies. We very much appreciate your input on what you think the health department should focus on. I will put a shameless plug in that we need to focus a little more on emergency preparedness because that's just what I do. With that, are there any questions?
I have one hand raised. Steve Wilharm, go ahead.
Tom,
Except Steve.
how you doing, buddy?
Okay.
Hey, can I say that you've done an absolute yeoman's job during this entire event? anytime I've called Tom, he answered the phone, which is rare when I call people, and he answered any questions I had. He's been a great resource to us through this entire event and during these quarterly training sessions and with the LEPC. So a big thank you to Tom. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. I hope we don't have to do this as frequently again. Not that I don't mind being with all you guys, but I'm tired.
I hear you.
All right. I do have a question in the chat. Is there any discussion about boosters for first responders that were fully vaccinated in January?
Yeah, so the thought about boosters that hasn't been fully developed yet. We're uncertain whether or not boosters will be required. I know the chairman of what Pfizer was early this year saying he would anticipate people to get a booster, but you know that's from the manufacturer side. We'll see how immunity presents itself in the fall, and whether or not there are any additional outbreaks that come as a result of waning immunity.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead and place in the chat or raise your hand while I'm uploading. All right, I'm not seeing any other. Oops, I went too far.
I just gave you the link to our community health assessment update survey if anybody is interested.
Thank you. And I will include that in the email that I send in the next few days. All right, not seeing any other comments. Let me get to the final part of our session. And this is about resource request process. And this is an update that came to us last week from PEMA. And just to give you guys on the local level the same information we have, just give me a moment for the screen to pop up. While I'm waiting for the screen to pop up, last reminder to sign in for today's meeting so you can get credit for attendance. If you did not get a chance to register and train PA, one of the questions is your train username, and then I will log you in and get you so you can get your certificate. So the resource request update, and this was recently updated by PEMA, and these slides come straight from their slide deck that they gave us. But some things I want to realize is identify the source before it's needed. When you do your hazard vulnerability assessment, your capabilities, see what's needed there. What is your intermunicipal mutual aid? We at the county level work on our county mutual aid. What are some other procurement options? What do you have to purchase? And also, what are your just-in-time contracting possibilities? So things to consider during resource planning. How's it going to get there? And how's it going to move around once it's there? If you request a large piece of equipment, you also have to request a driver and operator. So remember that. So then in staffing, who's feeding them? Where are they staying? How are you securing it? What about handling the equipment? And there could be many other things to play into that. So when you're doing your planning. So the resource process starts in the upper left-hand corner at the municipal level, and you have an unmet need. One thing I want you to think about is learning what your neighbors have and their capabilities. If you need something, reach out to your neighboring municipalities first, and then you can do that international or intermunicipal mutual aid. If you're unable to meet that, then you request through the county. The county tries to meet that need if we have the capability, or we would work with other counties or through the Region 13 process. And if we can't, then we would submit to PEMA for the resource request. Again, who can submit a resource request? Municipals, county agencies, critical infrastructure facilities, our VOADs, anybody. Just one thing is it all has to come through the county EMA office to go up to PEMA. I will put in the email that goes out a link to the resource request form so that you have those. It's a PDF fillable, or you can print it out and fill it out by hand and send it to us. Okay, life-saving request. This is more of us at the county level to PEMA. Life-saving requests must be made verbally. But you have 30 days to follow up with the paperwork. Now, obviously, if you make the request to us and we make the request up, we're going to have you still fill out the paperwork eventually. One thing to remember is if you're requesting something, it doesn't always mean it's free. There might be cost incurred, and make sure you are eligible to incur those costs on behalf of your agency, organization, or municipality. And why there is this formal resource process is, well, there's tracking, so we know where it is and how it's go through its entire process. And we have the documentation. That way, if there is damage or it's lost or whatnot. And it gives a detailed description by capability. Things to think about is a CSALT acronym. What's the capability? What's it going to do? What's the size? You know, do you need a 5-ton, 1-ton, 2-ton, type pickup? How many do you need? Where are you going to have it go to? Do you know what the FEMA resource type? And if you go to the NIMS typing on the FEMA website, you can look by every type of, especially public works materials. And how long are you going to need it, and when are you going to need the item? Eventually, there's going to be addendums to the resource request form that asks a little bit more in-depth question on stuff like right now, generators, transportation supplies, water supplies. They're going to have a specific for law enforcement, and this was instituted after the civil unrest of last year. Road salt, and they're working on other addendums. One thing to remember, when you do resource requests, we have a catch-all account that goes to all the EMA staff, and that's ema@alleghenycounty.us. Send it there unless we identify, for example, with the pandemic, we had you sending it to Mike Spur and Rick Colella because they were handling all the PPE stuff. So, but for general requests, just send to ema@alleghenycounty.us. So what happens next? The requests are reviewed by ACES EMA to validate you've done the municipal mutual aid, and all of our county, municipal, Region 13 resources are exhausted before we go up to the PEMA office, area office. We send the request up to the PEMA Western area office. It's viewed by them and also at headquarters by the logistics and operations staff. Requests may be contacted, so they might actually contact you at the local level to if there's other information needed. And they also might do a conference call at one point to determine, make sure they have all the information, because the last thing they want to do is to send the wrong asset, and then you have to wait even longer for more the equipment. One thing to remember, especially if it comes from the state level, PEMA is the coordinator, but they don't really own the resource. They're just joining the requester with the resource. And at the state level, the ESF lead agency will give their input, guidance, and their ability. And really, the resource owner determines whether it will be approved or denied. One of the things that we did receive this a few times during the pandemic is people requesting the National Guard. One thing to remember is the requests have to be based on capability, not the asset itself. So what are you trying to get done? And what do you need to get that done? And then they will, at the state level, get you in touch with or get you the right asset to meet that capability. One thing is the problem was the National Guard was requested pretty much in every county in the Commonwealth, and there's only so much to go around. And the big thing they had on here was, remember, it's not a ready resource, and it has to be implemented by the governor, and it falls under the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, which is not a primary agency. They're a supporting agency in the CRCC at PEMA headquarters. So that was just an update on the resource request process. I'm now going to make the ability for everyone to unmute. But please raise your hand or put it in the chat if you have any questions or anything, any general discussion. And if you don't, you can click on the red box in the upper right-hand corner and go ahead and leave the meeting. But Steve Wilharm, go ahead.
I just have one comment, Bob. Nice presentation. My comment is be careful with the National Guard. You might get contacted directly by some of the Guard people that said, hey, do you need us for this? We'll get an event through that. You pay for that. That gets billed to you directly, even though it takes the governor's action to when you request the Guard, they send you a bill. So just so you know that, if it's not a true emergency and you need to guard, you're gonna pay for it.
Yeah, unless the governor activates them under a state of emergency.
Correct.